In a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless outside opinions, there exists a quiet yet powerful guidance system within each of us: intuition. Dr. Wayne Dyer beautifully reminds us that God's language is intuition. It is not shouted, not forced, not written on stone tablets. It is whispered gently within your soul. When you learn to listen to this inner voice, you align with divine wisdom, clarity, and peace. This speech is about reconnecting with that inner guidance, tuning into your higher self, and trusting the whispers of God that already live within you. Intuition is God's silent whisper guiding your path, a truth that transcends culture, time, and even personal belief systems, because deep within every human being lies a sacred compass pointing us toward what is right for us in each moment. From the earliest days of our lives, we have felt it in the form of hunches, inner nudges, and quiet knowings that seem to arise from nowhere, yet carried with them an unshakable sense of certainty. It is not the loud, demanding voice of the world that constantly seeks to impose its expectations on us, but the gentle, subtle whisper of the divine reminding us that we are not alone, that there is a higher intelligence always present within us. When you pause to reflect, you may realize that the most pivotal decisions of your life were not always made through rational analysis or logical deduction, but through a sudden intuitive flash that felt true even when it could not be explained. This is how God communicates, not in the noise of argument or the clamor of external validation, but in the silence of the heart where clarity is born. Think about those moments when you stood at a crossroads, uncertain of which direction to take, and somehow a quiet inner voice urged you toward one choice over another. Perhaps you could not justify it to anyone else at the time, but something within you just knew. Later, as events unfolded, you realized that this gentle nudge had led you exactly where you were meant to go. That is the nature of intuition. It does not scream for your attention. It does not argue its case. It simply whispers with a quiet authority, waiting for you to trust it. The tragedy of modern living is that so many people have become disconnected from this inner guidance, drowned out by the constant stream of noise, comparison, and distraction. Yet the whisper has never gone away. It is always there, waiting for you to tune in, reminding you that you are guided and supported by something greater than yourself. When you begin to see intuition as God's language, you recognize that it is not some mystical concept reserved for the spiritually elite, but the very essence of divine communication available to every soul. This inner guidance is impartial, ever present, and filled with wisdom beyond the grasp of the human intellect. The rational mind can only work with what it already knows, what it has observed, studied, or remembered. Intuition, however, taps into an infinite field of intelligence, a spiritual database that transcends time and space, providing insight that the logical mind could never access on its own. This is why intuition so often surprises us. It presents answers and directions that feel right, but cannot be explained through conventional reasoning. To trust intuition, then, is to trust God's presence in your life, to affirm that there is more to reality than what you can see with your eyes or prove with your intellect. Consider the many times people say things like, "Something told me not to go there," or "I had a feeling this was the right opportunity," or "I just knew I had to call this person." These are not coincidences or random occurrences. They are glimpses of divine communication flowing through intuition. The more you learn to honor these moments, the more you begin to live in alignment with your higher self. You start to realize that the guidance you seek is not out there in another book, another opinion, another authority figure, but within you, always accessible if you are willing to listen. Trusting this whisper requires courage because the world often demands proof and logic, while intuition offers neither. Instead, it offers certainty without evidence, peace without explanation, and direction without a map. To follow intuition is to walk by faith, trusting that the whisper you hear within is the divine speaking directly to your heart. This whisper has a particular quality that distinguishes it from the voice of fear or ego. Fear is loud, anxious, and urgent, always pushing you toward action from a place of scarcity or worry. Ego is prideful, insistent, and self-centered, always seeking validation and superiority. Intuition, on the other hand, is calm, subtle, and steady. It carries no panic, no pressure, only a quiet knowing that resonates deeply with your soul. When you learn to recognize this difference, you begin to discern which inner voice is truly guiding you. Intuition never seeks to control you. It gently guides, nudging you toward what will serve your highest good. It is patient, waiting as long as it takes for you to notice and follow its direction. The more you listen, the clearer it becomes, and the more you ignore it, the fainter it feels. But even then, it never disappears because God's whisper never abandons you. There is a reason the most enlightened teachers throughout history have emphasized stillness, meditation, prayer, and silence. These practices are not about escaping the world, but about tuning into the inner world where divine whispers can be heard. In silence, the clutter of the mind begins to dissolve, and the subtle guidance of intuition emerges with clarity. In stillness, you realize that the answers you have been seeking externally are already alive within you, waiting to be acknowledged. The busy, noisy world makes it difficult to hear, but the whisper does not need to be louder, you simply need to become quieter. This is the paradox of intuition. You do not force it, you allow it. You do not chase it, you open to it. And when you do, you discover that you are never truly lost, because God's whisper is always present, always available to realign you with your true path. Think of the countless stories of people who followed an inexplicable hunch and later realized it saved their life, changed their destiny, or opened doors to opportunities they never imagined. These stories are not extraordinary. They are examples of what happens when you pay attention to God's language of intuition. The whisper might tell you to avoid a certain situation, to trust a particular opportunity, to forgive someone, to take a leap of faith, or to wait patiently. Each time you honor that whisper, you strengthen your trust in the divine, and life begins to flow with greater ease and synchronicity. The universe, after all, is not random. It is guided by intelligence, and intuition is the bridge between that intelligence and your individual experience. To live intuitively is to live in harmony with divine order, allowing yourself to be guided step by step, even when you cannot see the entire path ahead. Children are perhaps the purest example of intuition at work, because they have not yet been conditioned to doubt themselves or override their inner voice with excessive logic. A child will often say, "I don't like this person," or "I feel something is wrong," or "I think this is the right way," with a clarity that adults dismiss as imagination. Yet more often than not, their instincts prove true. As we grow older, we are taught to suppress these instincts, to trust external authority over internal wisdom. And in doing so, we lose touch with God's whisper. But it is never lost forever, it simply waits for us to remember. The spiritual journey, in many ways, is not about learning something new, but about unlearning the noise and conditioning that have buried our intuitive connection. By returning to a childlike openness, you begin to hear God's whisper again with clarity and trust. Learning to trust your intuition is an act of faith, and like any muscle, it grows stronger with practice. At first, you may doubt it, question it, or dismiss it, only to later realize that it was right all along. With time, you begin to recognize its patterns, its tone, its consistency. You begin to notice how following intuition brings peace, alignment, and flow, while ignoring it often leads to struggle, resistance, and regret. This contrast becomes your teacher, showing you that the divine whisper is not only real but reliable. As you build this trust, you start to make decisions more confidently, not because you can explain them logically, but because you know deep within that they are aligned with God's guidance for you. Ultimately, intuition is God's way of reminding you that you are never alone, that you are always guided, and that the answers you seek are already within you. It is not about predicting the future or controlling outcomes. It is about aligning with the present moment and allowing divine wisdom to guide your steps. Every time you honor the whisper, you strengthen your relationship with the divine. Every time you act on that quiet nudge, you affirm that you are in partnership with something greater than yourself. And every time you trust your intuition, you are reminded that God's presence is not distant or abstract, but intimate and immediate, speaking directly to you through the silent whisper of your soul. Silence and stillness are the gateways to hearing your inner voice, because in the absence of noise, distraction, and constant mental chatter, the divine whisper of intuition finally has room to be heard. Modern life has conditioned us to equate activity with progress, to constantly fill every moment with sound, stimulation, and movement. Yet in this endless pursuit of external business, we lose touch with the most important source of guidance within us. Imagine standing near a rushing waterfall and trying to hear the soft rustle of a leaf in the wind. It would be nearly impossible, because the roar of the water drowns everything else out. The same is true within our minds. The rushing waterfall is the endless stream of thoughts, worries, to-do lists, and judgments, and the leaf rustling in the wind is the quiet, gentle voice of intuition. Unless you step away from the noise, unless you choose silence and stillness, that whisper cannot reach your awareness. God's language of intuition does not compete with the chaos of the mind. It waits patiently for the moments when you allow yourself to quiet down enough to hear it. There is a reason why so many of the great spiritual traditions emphasize practices of silence, meditation, prayer, and solitude. These are not just rituals or disciplines. They are methods of clearing the inner clutter so that the voice of the soul can be heard. In silence, you begin to recognize that there is an entire dimension of awareness beneath the surface of thought. Most people are so identified with their thinking that they believe they are their thoughts, constantly reacting to them, believing every story the mind tells. But when you cultivate stillness, you realize you are the observer of those thoughts, not their prisoner. You begin to notice the space between thoughts, the quiet field of awareness in which intuition speaks. This realization is transformative because in that space you discover the presence of God, not as an external figure, but as the still, guiding voice within your own being. Think about the last time you sat in complete silence, away from phones, television, conversations, and noise. For many people, the very idea of silence is uncomfortable. They fidget, they feel restless, they crave distraction. That discomfort arises because silence reveals the inner chaos we have been avoiding. The mind does not want to be still, it thrives on activity. But beneath that initial restlessness lies a profound peace, and within that peace, you begin to hear guidance that is always available. This is why silence feels so healing once you allow yourself to settle into it. It is like the sediment in a glass of water. When the glass is constantly shaken, the water appears cloudy, but when it is left still, the sediment sinks and the water becomes clear. Silence and stillness clear the waters of the mind so that the guidance of intuition can shine through. The world often tells us that answers are out there, in the next book, the next lecture, the next expert, the next opinion. But the truth is that the deepest answers lie within. The reason so many people cannot access them is that they never stop long enough to listen. When you embrace silence, you shift from seeking outside approval to trusting inner wisdom. In stillness, you realize that you already know more than you think you do because divine intelligence is flowing through you at every moment. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is in silence that creativity is born, insights are revealed, and solutions arise seemingly out of nowhere. What feels like sudden inspiration is often intuition that has been waiting for the noise to subside so it can come through. That is why so many people experience their greatest ideas while walking alone, sitting in nature, or lying awake in the quiet hours of the night. The mind is not forcing answers in those moments. The soul is simply whispering them into awareness. Stillness is not just the absence of movement. It is the presence of alignment. In stillness, your body, mind, and spirit fall into harmony. You become grounded, present, and aware of what is happening within you and around you. The world may still be moving, but within you, there is a center of calm that remains steady. From this place of stillness, intuition arises naturally, because you are no longer pulled in 1,000 directions by distractions. Imagine a pond on a windy day. The surface ripples and distorts, making it impossible to see clearly beneath. But when the wind calms, the surface becomes still, and suddenly you can see the reflection of the sky above and the depths below. Stillness allows you to see the reflection of divine guidance and the depth of your own wisdom. Without it, everything remains distorted and unclear in our daily lives. We often underestimate the power of simply pausing. Taking a moment to breathe, to step away, to sit in silence can completely shift the way we see a situation. A problem that seemed overwhelming suddenly feels manageable. A decision that felt impossible suddenly becomes clear. This is because silence connects you back to your inner compass. When you are constantly reacting, rushing, and overthinking, you are cut off from that compass like a sailor trying to navigate without a map. But in stillness, the map reappears and the path becomes evident. Silence does not erase challenges, but it reveals a way through them by reconnecting you to the divine guidance already present. The difficulty is that society often glorifies noise and business while dismissing stillness as unproductive. We are conditioned to believe that if we are not doing something, we are wasting time. But some of the most important shifts in life happen not when you are doing, but when you are being. Silence and stillness are forms of being that recharge your spirit and allow intuition to guide your doing more effectively. Without them, you may be busy but not aligned, active but not purposeful, moving but not progressing. In stillness, however, your actions become more intentional because they are informed by inner wisdom rather than external pressure. This is why people who practice silence and stillness regularly often appear calmer, more centered, and more confident in their decisions. They are living from the guidance of their inner voice rather than the demands of the outer world. Nature itself teaches us the importance of stillness. A tree does not force itself to grow faster by constant movement. It simply stands still, rooted deeply, receiving nourishment from the earth and energy from the sun. In its stillness, it grows in perfect alignment with the rhythms of nature. Similarly, mountains, rivers, and skies all reflect a quiet wisdom that comes from simply existing. When you spend time in nature, you often feel more connected, more at peace, more intuitive, because nature draws you into its stillness. In that environment, your mind slows down, your senses open, and your inner voice becomes more audible. This is why so many people seek retreats in nature when they need clarity. They are instinctively returning to stillness to reconnect with their intuitive guidance. There is also a profound humility in silence and stillness. When you stop trying to control everything with constant thought and action, you open yourself to being guided by something greater than your limited perspective. You acknowledge that your mind alone does not have all the answers, and you surrender to the wisdom of the divine. This surrender is not weakness, it is strength, because it allows you to access insights beyond your human capacity. In stillness, you stop forcing and you begin allowing. You stop resisting and you begin receiving. You stop drowning in questions and you begin hearing answers. Silence is the sacred space where the voice of God can speak directly into your heart without interference. Many people believe that intuition is rare, that only a few gifted individuals can access it. But the truth is that everyone has access. It is simply a matter of tuning in. Silence and stillness are the tuning fork that aligns you with the right frequency. Imagine trying to hear a soft melody on a radio filled with static. The melody is always there, but unless you adjust the dial, you cannot hear it clearly. Silence is how you adjust the dial of your awareness. The more you practice it, the more clearly you hear the music of intuition playing within you. Over time, you begin to trust it, to rely on it, to live by it. You realize that you do not need to chase every external answer, because the most profound guidance is already within you, accessible in the quiet spaces of your soul. Even science has begun to recognize the value of silence and stillness. Studies on meditation and mindfulness reveal how these practices reduce stress, increase clarity, enhance creativity, and improve decision-making. But beyond the measurable benefits lies something even greater: the reconnection with your spiritual essence. Science can measure brain waves and neural activity, but what it cannot fully capture is the profound sense of alignment and divine connection that arises when you dwell in silence. That experience is deeply personal, beyond words, yet universally transformative. It is in that space where you not only hear your intuition, but also feel the presence of something larger guiding you. It is where you realize that you are not separate from God, but deeply connected, always in communication through the quiet language of intuition. Ultimately, silence and stillness are not luxuries, they are necessities for a soul that seeks to live in harmony with divine guidance. They are not about withdrawing from life, but about engaging with life from a place of deeper alignment. They are not about escape, but about connection. In silence, you discover yourself. In stillness, you discover God. And in both, you rediscover the inner voice that has been guiding you all along, patiently waiting for you to listen. Intuition aligns you with purpose beyond logic and reason, because the divine voice within does not operate through the narrow lens of human intellect, but through the expansive vision of spirit. The mind, for all its brilliance, is limited by what it has learned, what it has been told, and what it can analyze based on past experiences. Logic is a tool of the finite. It works with what is known and measurable. Intuition, however, flows from the infinite, drawing upon wisdom that transcends your personal history and connects you with a universal intelligence that always knows the way. When you rely only on logic, you confine yourself to the boundaries of what seems possible. But when you allow intuition to guide you, you step into a realm where possibilities are unlimited. Intuition points you toward a higher purpose that cannot be mapped out in spreadsheets or explained through reason. Yet it feels more true than anything your mind could calculate. Every human being has a calling, a purpose that is uniquely theirs, yet many people struggle to discover it because they look for it through analysis rather than alignment. They ask what makes the most sense, what is safest, what is most practical, and while those questions may provide stability, they rarely lead to fulfillment. The purpose of your life is not found in what seems logical, but in what feels deeply aligned with your soul. Intuition is the compass that points you in that direction. It may guide you to take a step that defies conventional wisdom, to pursue a path that others do not understand, to make a choice that appears irrational from the outside but feels undeniably right on the inside. When you follow those intuitive nudges, you discover that your purpose unfolds not as a plan written in stone, but as a journey revealed step by step, each step aligned with a higher order that reason alone could never predict. History is filled with examples of people who followed intuition beyond logic and discovered their true calling. Great inventors, artists, leaders, and visionaries often describe a moment of inner knowing that defied all practical considerations. They felt drawn to an idea, a mission, or a cause without any guarantee of success. Logic told them it was risky, unreasonable, even impossible, but intuition whispered otherwise. That whisper is the voice of purpose, and those who dared to follow it often became the very individuals who changed the course of history. Their stories remind us that purpose is not about what seems practical, but about what feels inevitable in the core of your being. Intuition is the bridge between your life and that inevitability, the unseen hand guiding you toward the destiny only your soul can fulfill. One of the reasons intuition leads us to purpose is because it bypasses fear. Logic often operates under the influence of fear, constantly assessing risk, calculating outcomes, and avoiding uncertainty. Intuition, on the other hand, speaks from a place of trust in the divine order of life. It does not concern itself with probabilities or statistics. It simply directs you toward what is right. This is why following intuition can feel frightening to the rational mind. It asks you to take leaps without visible evidence, to walk paths without clear maps. Yet when you dare to listen, you discover that those leaps carry you exactly where you are meant to be. Logic may keep you safe, but intuition takes you to your destiny. And it is in that space of destiny that you feel most alive, most fulfilled, most in tune with your higher purpose. Think about the times in your own life when you felt called to something that didn't make logical sense, but resonated deeply within you. Perhaps you felt compelled to change careers, to move to a new city, to reach out to a person, or to start a project without fully knowing why. At first, it may have seemed irrational, but as you followed that pull, doors began to open, synchronicities unfolded, and a greater picture began to reveal itself. That is the nature of living by intuition. You cannot always see the destination, but each step feels undeniably aligned. You begin to trust that even when logic cannot see the path, intuition is already guiding you along it. The more you honor that guidance, the clearer your purpose becomes, until one day you look back and realize that everything made sense, not in the logic of the mind, but in the wisdom of the soul. Intuition also aligns you with purpose by connecting you to something greater than personal ambition. Logic often measures success in terms of external achievements, material gains, or societal approval. While those can bring temporary satisfaction, they rarely provide lasting fulfillment. Purpose, however, is about contribution, about living in a way that uplifts, serves, and expands not only your own life, but the lives of others. Intuition is always aligned with this higher purpose because it comes from the divine source that connects us all. When you follow intuition, you often find yourself doing things that not only bring you joy, but also positively impact those around you. You may discover talents you didn't know you had, passions you never imagined, and opportunities that place you in service of something greater than yourself. That alignment creates a sense of meaning that logic alone could never provide. There is a flow to life when you live by intuition, a synchronicity that feels almost miraculous. You meet the right people at the right time, opportunities arise just when you need them, and challenges that once felt insurmountable dissolve in unexpected ways. This flow is not random. It is the natural result of aligning with your true purpose. When you act from intuition, you are moving in harmony with divine order, and life supports that alignment. Logic may struggle to explain it, but the experience is undeniable. You begin to realize that you are not forcing your way through life, but being guided by it, carried along a current that knows exactly where you are meant to go. That current is your purpose, and intuition is how you stay in it. Another way intuition guides you beyond logic is by reminding you that purpose is not always about grand gestures or monumental achievements. Sometimes purpose is found in the small, quiet choices that feel deeply aligned in the moment. Logic may tell you that only big decisions matter, but intuition knows that every step matters, every act of authenticity contributes to the unfolding of your destiny. Purpose is lived not in some distant future, but in the present moment, and intuition is what keeps you present. Each time you honor a nudge, follow a feeling, or trust a whisper, you are living your purpose, even if the world does not recognize it as such. Over time, those small moments weave together into a life that reflects your highest calling. A life guided not by reason but by resonance. There is also a deep liberation in living by intuition rather than logic. Logic is often bound by external expectations, what society deems respectable, what family believes is right, what tradition prescribes. Intuition frees you from those constraints because it speaks directly to your soul, bypassing the filters of cultural conditioning. It invites you to be authentic, to follow the unique path only you can walk. In doing so, it aligns you with your true purpose, not the purpose others have imagined for you. This authenticity may not always be easy, because it often requires stepping away from the crowd, but it brings with it a profound sense of freedom. You no longer live for appearances or approval. You live in alignment with who you truly are. That alignment is where your deepest joy and your greatest contribution meet. The journey of living by intuition is also a journey of trust. Trust that there is more to life than meets the eye. Trust that your soul knows the way even when your mind does not. Trust that every step taken in faith is leading you closer to the fulfillment of your purpose. Trust does not mean blind naivety. It means recognizing that logic has its place, but it cannot be the only guide. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a poor master. Intuition, on the other hand, is the voice of the master within, guiding the servant to act in alignment with divine purpose. When you place intuition at the center of your decisions and allow logic to serve that guidance, you create a powerful partnership between soul and mind. That partnership allows you to live with clarity, direction, and purpose beyond anything reason could achieve alone. What becomes clear as you follow intuition is that purpose is not something you must struggle to create, it is something you must align with. It is already written in the fabric of your soul, already alive within you, waiting to be revealed. Logic tries to construct purpose like a blueprint, but intuition uncovers it like a hidden treasure. Each time you listen, each time you follow, a piece of that treasure is revealed, and your life begins to reflect the divine design that has always been there. The more you align with it, the more fulfilled you feel. Not because you have figured it out through reason, but because you have allowed yourself to live it through intuition. Living by intuition is living in harmony with God's will, because intuition is the very channel through which divine wisdom flows into your life. When you surrender to that quiet inner guidance, you are no longer struggling against the current of life, but allowing yourself to be carried by it. Most people live from the mind, and the mind is constantly analyzing, judging, comparing, and trying to control outcomes. It seeks certainty and security, but in doing so it often creates resistance, fear, and disconnection from the higher order of existence. Intuition, however, bypasses the restless mind and connects you directly to the flow of divine intention. It speaks not in fear but in peace, not in confusion but in clarity, not in doubt but in trust. To live by intuition, then, is to align yourself with the will of God, because God's will is never shouted in commands from the outside world. It is whispered gently in the depths of your soul. When you begin to honor your intuition consistently, life takes on a rhythm that feels harmonious rather than chaotic. You notice that situations unfold with perfect timing, relationships appear that support your growth. Opportunities arise when you are ready for them, and challenges teach you lessons that shape your path. This is not coincidence or luck. It is the natural outcome of living in alignment with God's will. The divine is always guiding you, but if you ignore your intuition, you miss the cues and resist the flow. When you trust those inner nudges, you step into a dance with life itself, where each step is guided by a wisdom greater than your own. This is why people who live intuitively often describe feeling as though life is conspiring in their favor, because they are no longer fighting against what is, but allowing themselves to be guided by what is meant to be. Living by intuition also requires humility, because it asks you to release the illusion of control. The mind wants to plan every detail, to predict every outcome, to hold on tightly to its own agenda. But God's will is often different from the limited plans we make for ourselves. Intuition gently redirects us when we are moving off course, nudging us toward a path that serves not only our growth, but also the greater good. Sometimes this guidance may feel uncomfortable because it asks us to step out of our comfort zones or let go of attachments we have clung to. But if we listen, we eventually see that it was always leading us to something better, something more aligned. Living intuitively is an act of trust, trusting that even when you cannot see the full picture, The divine can, and your role is to follow the inner direction one step at a time. There are countless moments in life when intuition whispers in ways that cannot be explained through logic, yet carry with them a sense of certainty. You may suddenly feel the urge to call someone, only to find they desperately needed to hear your voice. You may feel drawn to take a new path in your career or move to a new place without any clear reason, only to later discover that it opened doors you could not have imagined. You may feel compelled to say yes to an opportunity that seems risky, or no to something that looks perfect on paper, and later realize that choice was divinely guided. These experiences remind you that living by intuition is not about making sense to the world, but about being faithful to the voice of God within. Each time you follow that voice, you deepen your trust, and each time your trust grows, your life becomes more aligned with divine will. Intuition also protects you, often in ways you only recognize in hindsight. There are moments when you feel a sudden warning, a gut feeling not to proceed, or an inner resistance to something that everyone else encourages you to do. At the time, it may seem irrational, but later you realize it saved you from harm or disappointment. This protective aspect of intuition is part of God's will working through you. It is not about living in fear, but about living in awareness, recognizing that the divine sees what you cannot see and gently guides you away from paths that do not serve your highest good. When you honor those protective whispers, you not only safeguard yourself, but also strengthen your relationship with God, affirming that you trust His will above your own limited perception. Living intuitively also frees you from the endless need for external validation. When you rely only on logic, you often feel the need to justify your decisions to others, to seek their approval, to conform to their expectations. But when you live by intuition, you no longer need that approval because you are following a higher authority within. You realize that your life is not about pleasing the world, but about aligning with God's will. This inner alignment brings a profound sense of peace, because even when others do not understand your choices, you know in your heart that you are walking the path meant for you. That peace becomes a testimony in itself, radiating outward and inspiring others to listen to their own inner voice. In this way, living intuitively not only transforms your own life, but also becomes a light for those around you. There is also a deep joy that comes from living in harmony with God's will. When you follow intuition, you often find yourself doing things that feel natural, fulfilling, and energizing even when they require effort. Work does not feel like a burden, but like an expression of your soul. Relationships feel more authentic and nurturing because they are built on alignment rather than obligation. Daily life becomes more meaningful, not because it is free from challenges, but because even challenges feel purposeful when viewed through the lens of divine guidance. This joy is not the fleeting happiness that comes from external success or material gains. It is a sustained sense of fulfillment that arises from knowing you are where you are meant to be, doing what you are meant to do. Guided by the voice of God within, intuition also cultivates compassion and service, because God's will is always rooted in love. When you live intuitively, you often feel guided to acts of kindness, generosity, and understanding that you may not have planned or considered logically. You may feel nudged to help someone, to speak a word of encouragement, or to forgive a hurt that logic says is unforgivable. These intuitive impulses come from the divine, reminding you that your purpose is not only about your own journey, but also about the ways in which you can be a vessel of God's love in the world. By following these impulses, you align yourself with the greater will that seeks healing, connection, and harmony for all. In this way, living intuitively becomes a form of prayer and action, a daily embodiment of divine will through the choices you make and the way you live. Another dimension of living intuitively is learning patience and surrender. Intuition often guides you in steps rather than giving you the full picture. It may tell you what to do next, but not reveal what comes after. This can be challenging for the mind, which wants certainty and long-term plans. But living intuitively teaches you to trust the process, to walk one step at a time, to surrender to the unfolding of God's plan without demanding to know every detail. This surrender is not passive, it is active faith. It is saying yes to the moment, yes to the guidance, yes to the unknown, trusting that the unknown is not empty, but filled with divine wisdom. In this way, living by intuition becomes a spiritual practice of patience, reminding you that you are guided not just to destinations, but through journeys, each step a part of God's will for your growth and evolution. There is also a profound sense of unity that comes from living in harmony with God's will through intuition. You begin to see that you are not separate from the world around you, but intricately connected to it. The intuitive nudges you receive are not just about your personal journey, but about the role you play in the greater tapestry of life. Each choice you make influences others, and each act of alignment creates ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. Living intuitively reveals this interconnectedness, because the guidance you receive often places you exactly where you are needed, at the exact time you are needed, in service to something larger than yourself. This awareness deepens your sense of purpose and belonging, because you realize that you are part of a divine symphony, each note guided by God's hand. Each action contributing to the harmony of the whole. Living by intuition is ultimately about trust, surrender, and love. It is about trusting that the inner voice is truly the voice of God, surrendering your limited plans to the greater wisdom of divine will, and living in love with yourself, with others, and with the world around you. It is about recognizing that God's will is not something to fear, but something to embrace, because it always leads to growth, fulfillment, and harmony. When you live intuitively, you discover that you are never alone, never without guidance, never without support. You realize that life is not a random series of events, but a carefully orchestrated journey, and intuition is the divine compass that keeps you aligned with it. In following that compass, you live not from fear or confusion, but from faith and clarity, and in doing so, you embody the very essence of what it means to live in harmony with God's will